Imagine waiting 2 weeks to know if you got a like or not, or a thumbs up. In the decades before the internet, people made comics, and we reached out to each other. What was it like? This is the Sequential Artists Workshop, and these are the 90s mini comics oral history archives. Come join us as we take a longer look at those analog days when communication was a lot slower, maybe more deliberate, maybe more reckless. Who knows? It was just different. Join us as we take a look and really notice how much things have changed. Come join us on the socials. Sometimes it's Comics Workshop, sometimes it's Saw Comics. Either way, come check us out and welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our next episode of our 90s era mini comics oral history archives. Today we are meeting with Byron Black, and we're going to go ahead and jump into the episode. So, starting off, can you please say your name, the date, and where you are recording from?
My name is Byron Black. It's December 27th, 2024. I'm here in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
All right. And what were some comics publications that you created or were a part of during the pre-internet era?
Well, I did a little bit of work when I was involved in the National Fantasy Fan Federation. I did a story for a fellow member that appeared in one of his zines back in the mid 80s and did a couple of short things for a local science fiction fan club here. But as far as my own work, I created the Steppenwolf Chronicles. It first published it in 1995, and I did 4 issues total, lasting up until about 1998.
All right. Awesome. And what were some locations that you worked out of during the 80s and 90s?
I lived pretty much all my life here in Fort Wayne, so
All right. And how would you describe your comics work?
well, the Steppenwolf Chronicles is kind of the characters and all that are kind of my homage to I'm a fan of the Captain America comics and his enemy, the Red Skull, and I kind of base the character those characters and other characters from the comics on that. So it's kind of a tribute to that. And also I'm in a lifelong Jack Kirby fan, so I've tried to emulate his style as best as I can to my limited abilities. So um, um, I started it out as pretty much just as a hobby for my amusement, and then decided to see if I could share it with other people then.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that'll bring us into our comics production aspect. Can you tell us how you made your comics, what tools you used?
Yeah, when I started out, I really didn't know much of what I was doing. I was pretty much just doing it for my own fun, amusement. I was just drawing on some sketch paper, and when I finally got done with it, the paper really was not at all good for inking on. And I thought, well, maybe if I, do want to print this up in some way, I probably should find a better way to go about this. So I ended up just photocopying the art on, enlarging it onto 11 by 17 paper, and I was inking it with a ballpoint pen. So it was pretty crude in its first stages, but from there, the next issue still doing that, but then I started moving on to using the old comic, the blue line paper that was kind of prevalent back there in the 90s. And I was using micron pens and also Sharpies for inking. So, yeah, I did develop my skills during that time.
Nice. And can you tell us how you would ready those comics for print?
Well, I'd make a copy, create like a master, um, and size it accordingly. So I would create, I'd paste the pages onto a sheet, then do that, like front and back, and then I would go to Office Depot and just place my masters down on the copiers, just run off my copies, um, take them home then, and then collate and fold and staple them.
Nice. All right. Do you Do you remember maybe how many you would print of your first comic and how that might have changed over time?
Oh, well, it's been a long time. I don't really recall my print runs exactly. I mean, it's initially is probably maybe anywhere from 20 to 30. Um, of course, as I ran out of copies, I could always make more, which I ended up doing. But as far as total amounts, I can't really recall. I never printed more than 100 copies of any one issue.
Nice. All right. Well, that'll bring us into our noticing and awareness section. Can you tell us when you first saw evidence of people making their own comics?
Well, I was familiar with it. Having been a part of, like I said, the N3F, I knew about like the fan press, amateur press. It wasn't really until maybe the late 80s when I met an actual comic book artist. He was working in a local comic book shop here, Pat Gabriel. Um, he was a pro, but he was also at that time creating his own comics through a small publisher. And so I was kind of, that really impressed me. And he was also a fellow Jack Kirby fan. So I kind of thought, well, it'd be kind of a neat thing to eventually be able to do something like that. So that kind of set me on the path. It took a few years, but that kind of was the where things kind of grew from.
Nice. Can you tell us a story of getting a comic that maybe surprised or inspired you?
Oh, gee. Uh, well, I do. Oh boy, there's been so many. I mean, as far as publishing, wanting to publish goes, I guess I could say that there was a comic company, I think it was Comico or Comico, publishing in the 80s. They had a comic that they had called Primer, where they were publishing new talent. I think that's where Matt Wagner's Grendel started. And I remember even getting some paper and trying to do my own story, thinking I could try out for that. I wasn't ready, but at least I was had something I was kind of shooting for. So that was one comic I think that kind of whetted my taste maybe for self-publishing.
Nice. All right. Did you ever read an issue of Fact Sheet 5?
I came across it somehow. I don't know how I did, but I remember I think I got a copy in a local bookstore maybe, and I did send a couple of issues of my comic in for review, which it did get reviewed. So it's kind of a neat thing. I kind of felt like I arrived
Yeah.
getting that kind of exposure. But yeah, I do remember it. It was really kind of towards the end of its publication run there in the mid 90s, I think.
hmm Did you ever order anything from there?
Don't really recall ordering. I'm pretty sure I traded with some people who were in there that,
Mhm.
I had that as an option for people who wanted to get my comic. I'd accept trades, and I think I did get a few trades that way.
Nice. All right. Well, that'll bring us right into our community section. Can you tell us the story of how you met your closest friend or peer in comics?
Well, aside from the artist I mentioned earlier, Pat Gabriel, who I would eventually get together with later, and he really kind of mentored me in my whole process of making comics. Um, I did become acquainted or met people through Max Inc., who is an artist with on Nick Durga's Amoeba Adventures comic at that time. I met him at a convention in Portland, Indiana, and that was really my first meeting with someone who was kind of involved in the small press comics circuit. And he was the comic Amoeba Adventures was a part of the UFO, the United Fanzine Organization. So I was kind of introduced to that group that way, and I ended up becoming a member of the group subsequently. And I met a lot of other people through that. There was, I don't know, at least a dozen people in the group at the time. So Um, was, some really good talent like Terry Flippo and J. Kevin Carrier, so many others that kind of passed through the group at that time. So it was really kind of a neat to meet some people with other, similar interests like that in publishing.
Yeah, nice. Can you tell us about the first kind of show or maybe con situation where there were other people doing what you were doing?
That was pretty much the convention there where I met Max Inc. in Portland, Indiana. I'd done one previous show here in Fort Wayne. That was when smaller, the conventions at that time were smaller and usually in hotel ballrooms,
Yeah.
usually a lot of dealers. And if they were lucky, they might have a few guest artists or creators there. But I think that was really the first show that where I met someone who was kind of doing the same thing I was.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I, you had to pay for a table, which was always kind of steep and kind of one of those horror stories you get from doing that sort of thing. I was talking to a guy there I knew from school, and he had a couple of tables set up, and turns out I found out that he knew the convention organizer, and he was getting his table for free. So that was just one of those breaks, I guess. But
Nice. All right. Can you tell us when you felt the most connected to the community?
like I was saying, when I joined the United Fanzine organization, that really kind of was a big, gateway, and um, you know, joining, developing community or camaraderie with other creators. We really had a good time of it, I think. Still in still in contact with a number of the people who are still creating themselves nowadays. So it was pretty neat that time, and I really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah. What about a time when you maybe felt the least connected?
Oh, I think probably just when I was starting out, I really, like I said, I didn't really know much of what I was doing as far as, the production of the comic. I knew there was, an amateur press out there. I just didn't know how to connect with them. So I was just kind of out there really just by myself at first. It wasn't until I started going to, like I said, my first con,
Mhm.
that, I was meeting some other creators, different, from pros to some people that were just starting out. So, I mean, I was getting acquainted more with people as far as, who was out there.
Yeah.
But at first, yeah, I was just kind of off there on my own, there around 94 or 95. Um, but it was really before I was really showed what I was doing to anybody.
Yeah. Nice. Well, who would you say were slash are your most significant peers in comics? Significant in maybe how much they influenced you and your work.
Well, as I mentioned, Pat Gabriel, he really, um, when I did publish my first comic, I in part dedicated it to him. He saw that and was really kind of struck by that. So we really struck up a close friendship, and he kind of mentored me from there. Just a lot of technical things, well, showing me things like, don't, redraw your whole logo on the covers and everywhere. Just make a copy of it and, you know, paste it down. You'll save yourself a lot of time and effort. Just, a lot of tricks of the trade like that hadn't really occurred to me. He was the main one. I also, within the next few years of that, I met another, actually, he was a kind of a small press comics legend, um, Richard Grass Green. He was here in Fort Wayne, but he had roots going way back to the beginnings of small press, fan press comics, and so I became acquainted with him, and we had a lot, enjoyed visiting him in his shop, and so it was a really neat time. But aside from that, just I met various people, like I said, in the United Fanzine organization. We really just encouraged each other a lot, gave each other feedback. So that was all valuable to all of us mutually as far as our growth.
Yeah. That's awesome. Would you and you would did you do collaborations or jams with this community?
I didn't really do much collaborations. I've always been very slow in my
Yeah.
process, so it's kind of difficult for me to follow through on efforts like that. I would do pinup illustrations for other creators a lot of times. We would, trade those. So I guess that was kind of the extent of, the collaborations I would do with others.
Yeah. And how would you say that this community affected your own work?
Oh, I think it inspired me really just to continue with it. Like I said, getting, positive feedback from other people, it kind of, lit the fire for me to continue with it. It was really, you're not out there kind of in the void. Um, there's people out there that appreciate it. So I thought, yeah, may as well continue with this.
Okay. All right, well, that'll bring us into our distribution section. Can you tell us how you traded or sold your comics?
Um, Mainly the United Fanzine organization was the main place because it was part of the group rules. You circulated your comic within the group, and everyone would review um, the books in the local in the club fanzine. I guess I did get a couple of issues in my comic reviewed in Tim Corrigan's Small Press Comics Explosion. I think that was the
Mhm.
name of it, SPCE.
Mhm.
Um, I do recall I got some orders that way. I also had some people, I don't know how they heard about me, that I they somehow found me, I guess, and got my comics through me. But it was just I don't know, a lot of it maybe was just word of mouth. I don't know. So, I connected with people somehow during that time.
Mhm. Yeah. Nice. All right. Did you ever feel connected to a particular store or venue that supported you in your community?
Um, I had my comic carried at one of the local comic book shops. I mean, I know somehow I talked them into it. Since I guess I was a regular customer, maybe they just took pity on me and carried it. But yeah, I don't know. I imagine a few of them sold. I think my first issue I had carried at a local bookstore that was kind of a more of a bookseller back in those days. But um, yeah, I don't know if I imagine a few of them sold. I don't, I never really heard much about it, I guess, from anybody. But
All right. And can you tell us about some of the other comics from that time that you remember? Maybe some that you traded through the fanzine organization?
um, well, Terry Flippo did his Axel and Alex series. Nick Durgan, Max Inc., the Amoeba Adventures. J. Kevin Carrier, he did a various comics. Lady Spectra and Sparky and Gloriana. Let's see. Ooh, Troy Hickman. He did a lot of really zany comics. Holy Crawlers, which was um, actually I think was picked up by Image Comics later on. They adapted that more into a very slick publication. Um, Pam Bliss did a lot of neat mini comics at that time. Um, those are just a handful I could name right offhand.
That's great. Um, all right. Were you ever a part of any kind of distribution collective?
No, if there were any out there, I just didn't know about them. Nobody else seemed to speak about them that I'm aware of. Um, it would have been nice to have known about that, I guess.
Yeah.
It might have, widened my audience, but no, I was just very small time, do it yourself.
All right. All right, well, that'll bring us into our wrap-up section. What do you miss about that time?
Oh, I think being a part of an actual group, there was that sense of community and camaraderie there that I think we all enjoyed that nowadays it seems to be lacking in the internet age. I mean, yeah, you can reach a lot more people on the internet, but I don't think there's really the closeness that we had back then. It's just easy enough, for someone just to go by and leave a like or maybe an occasional comment, but it seems a little more casual. Back then, there was a lot more intentionality, I think, in the community.
Yeah. Is there anything you don't miss about that time?
Well, probably the whole printing and prepping, for publication. The printing it and the collating, folding, and stapling. That could be kind of tedious.
Yeah.
Nowadays with print-on-demand services like I've been using with Kablam, that really makes life a lot easier.
Yeah. All right. Can you tell us one more memory or anecdote from that time?
Um, well, it was kind of odd. I don't know how they found out about me, but I received a merchandise catalog from the fan club of John Kay and Steppenwolf. They must have thought I was some sort of fanzine out there about the rock band, but they sent me a merch catalog, and I've maybe once or twice, but I just always was struck, how did these people find out about me? This was, I think, just before the internet really took off. So, or maybe they did hear about me on the internet somehow, but it was always really strange to me.
All right. Well, our last question then would be, can you tell us three people who you think we should contact for these archives?
Um, Boy, so many. Um, well, Nick Durg, I think, would be one. He was very prolific with his comic The Amoeba Adventures. Pam Bliss did a lot of really neat mini comics, still does. J. Kevin Carrier is another one, I think. Did a lot of neat comics with his different characters, like superhero Lady Spectre and his fantasy adventure series Gloriana. So, um, yeah, I think those would be some good people to try and talk to.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll conclude our interview. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any final thoughts?
Not that I can really think of, other than I have my old comics, the Steppenwolf Chronicles from the 90s. They're long out of print, but I have recently compiled all that into a reprint volume, which is available through Amazon's KDP service and can be ordered through their website. It's just the Steppenwolf Chronicles Archive Edition. And I've been producing new comics. I've got two new issues I've started that since 2017. Like I said, it takes me a long time to make these. So, but they're available through Kablam's online store, Indie Planet. You can just search for the Steppenwolf Chronicles and find them that way. They're also available as free digital downloads, so you can always take a chance that way too.
Well, thank you so much. And where can our viewers and audience find more of your work outside of Amazon? Like, where can they find more of your information?
Um, well, like I said, Indie Planet. I do have a website where I've collected my old comics on and put them up, the whole content or most of the content. I think it's just I don't know. Forgive me, I don't remember the exact website address, but it's a web hosting service, Weebly. So
Mhm.
it's just the Steppenwolf Chronicles Archive Edition, and you can probably Google it with Weebly and turn it up that way.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and letting us catalog your story. And thank you so much to our audience for checking in. Um, yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. This has been a production of the Sequential Artists Workshop, or SAW. You can find us on social media at Comics Workshop and online at sawcomics.org. You can hear about our many courses at learn.sawcomics.org. SAW is a nonprofit and supported by people like you. Learn how to make a tax-deductible donation at the donate page of sawcomics.org. You can join our free community of comics explorers at members.sawcomics.org. Thanks so much for being here.